I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry about the delay at the start. We had a few additions to the agenda and changes. First of all, under item 1143 under public hearings, there's a small typo on the second line of the heading, Facilities Tax Exemption Certificate 2009 instead of 209-341. And we also have on the table tonight an add-on to the agenda, 1131, would be under unfinished business for the electric vehicle charging station relocation, which we have a handout. There was a change in the location, and we'll be talking about that under the agenda. We also have another handout that goes along with the revolving loan application that came from the county. It's called the Washington County Economic Development and Energy Revolving Loan Fund, and it's a document that's on the counter tonight, and just basically gives the information about the application process. And then finally, we have a couple other handouts. We have an agenda for the joint chamber meeting at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning. There's an agenda that's been developed, so we want to talk about that. And also, there's some information on Celtic expenses, and also a letter that I put together. It's my understanding that the State House Tax Policy Committee is hearing testimony tomorrow on Wednesday on all the tax credits related to the corporate tax structure, which would include brownfield, historic district, historic tax credits, and another one. But the ones that impact us are those two. So I prepared a letter talking about how we use those incentives in the community. So do we have any other additions to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Morrow? Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Gearbaugh? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we don't have any absences, so we'll move on to an award that we're giving to our some creative employees.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for allowing us to make this representation tonight. Last month, February 8th, Michigan Recreation Parks Association, we had our annual conference, and Saline won the Innovative Park Resource Award. And tonight, we're here to represent this. We're extremely proud to have received this award, but we have to give credit where credit is due. Number one, Sunshine Lambert, our recreation programmer, is kind of like the brainchild behind this weird and wacky, innovative park resource. And Brian Korfman from DPW is the brainchild behind it. He actually is the inventor and the creator. So we just want to celebrate that tonight. But I'm going to let Sunshine tell you a little bit more about what our award is. We won it for our pumpkin launcher.
No show and tell? You didn't
No,
actually
well,
bring
we
it?
thought about that, but it's a little bit big for the
So maybe
room.
you want to launch tomatoes or something this way, you know?
So I'm gonna let Sunshine tell you what we use this thing for, and then bring Brian up here.
Great.
So, years ago we started this pumpkin rolling contest, and I see people here who've been there. And we've been doing it for probably 7 or 8 years. And after the first year, we had this idea that we needed to launch the pumpkin parts after, they kind of got smashed up and whatnot. I developed a pumpkin launcher. It was pretty sad. And so I got to talking to Brian, and he ended up coming up with a great design using recycled materials, old basketball, some old scrap, parts that he had hanging around. And we created this big pumpkin launcher, which, we don't just launch pumpkins anymore. We launch water balloons and paint balloons, and at Winterfest we launch snowballs and tennis balls and things like that. So we plan on doing lots of other things, and I want to thank Brian, for using his talents to design it, because what I had, it's hiding somewhere in a closet way far away. It somewhat worked, but not like Brian's does. So thank you so much, Brian.
So this is a state award, right? So you compete with the rest of the cities around the state? That's great. Congratulations.
And I'd just like to say, there's no way that we could have won this award without Brian, so that's why he's here to accept this award on behalf of Parks and Rec Department.
That's great. Well, thank you all for your vision and creativity.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation on the AATA transit plan. Oh, hi. There's a lot of people. We decided it must be the end of the trimester, so we have all the government students in here getting their credit. Is that correct? How many people are here for that? Raise your hand. Yeah. So this is actually really exciting because they're here to talk about a transit vision for the county, and you'll learn a lot about the future direction of transit in the county, which impacts all you students very significantly, especially if you don't have a car. So thanks a lot. We can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a very, very short version of what was ordinarily a 40-minute presentation. I've been asked to keep this down to 5 minutes. So what I've done is I've passed out a little handout here for everybody to follow along with. And what the handout describes is a step in our process that we're in now called the scenarios development step of the Transit Master Plan. The way this has worked, we've been working on the Transit Master Plan since about July. Went through a series of exercises with the community, came up with a vision for the county. We looked at the transit needs that exist in the county, and then finally developed a set of options for addressing those needs. Those options got bundled up into 3 scenarios, and we've just spent the last month presenting to public meetings all over the county the 3 scenarios that are in contention for the master plan, and those are contained in this book in front of you. And as I said, we've just recently wrapped up this stage, so now we're kind of in an in-between stage. What we were doing in these 20 meetings, we were presenting the scenarios to people and asking them to express their preference. There were 3 scenarios. One of them was called Lifeline Plus, another one was called Accessible County, and the third one was called Smart Growth. And we presented these scenarios and then and described them to people. And then what we asked them to do was to fill out a little feedback form, which I also handed out to you. And basically we got people to state their preference as far as which scenarios they'd like to see brought forward, or which scenario, I should say, should be brought forward into the master plan. And the idea here now is to take one of the scenarios, develop it, come up with a funding strategy and a implementation strategy, and use that then to develop the full plan, which we expect to have adopted by our board in April. So we're getting real close. We've taken a long time getting up to this point, and some people have been frustrated. They want to know, where is the plan? Other people have thanked us for the slow, deliberate approach. If you'd like, I can walk you through some of the elements of the scenarios.
Yeah, also, is there enough in the back for the students? Do you know?
I'm afraid there isn't, but we do have a website. It's called movingyouforward.org, and the website will actually contain a description of all 3 scenarios, and you can still go on the website and voice your preference. There's a little ballot on the website, so people can get on that website and pick which scenario they'd like to see us go forward with. And I should tell you that that website, that part of the website, is going to be deactivated any day now because of the point that we're in. We're going to be going to our board in the next couple of weeks and making a recommendation to them as to which scenario we should go forward with the plan. So very briefly, what's in the scenarios, if you look at the first inside page of the book, we describe the Lifeline Plus scenario. And that basically concentrates a lot of resources on the existing urban areas, the Ann Arbor-Ipsy area, as well as points west of there. And we include about a 60% increase in the urban bus network, enhancements to the WAVE system, as well as door-to-door service throughout the entire county and van pools throughout the entire county. In the accessible county scenario, we add additional elements. Now we've got express services coming from each of the major population centers and focused on the urbanized area at the center of the county. We've also got community circulators. We show one here in Saline. For a model of this, you might look to Chelsea, where they've got a small community circulator already in operation. It was kind of interesting, too. A month ago, I gave a presentation in this room, one of the public meetings, and there was a woman here who says she's working on the circulator for Saline, and she had previously worked on the one for Chelsea. So I was glad to hear that somebody's a step ahead of us on this process. In the last scenario, in the smart growth scenario, that's where we add the final elements here. We add a couple of high-capacity transit systems, as well as regional rail systems. So in that scenario, you see the north-south rail line coming down from Livingston County. You also see the east-west rail line coming in from Wayne County, and then the Ann Arbor connector and the Washtenaw Avenue corridor. So that represents the scenarios in the kind of the fully built-out smart growth scenario. We also list some community impacts in here in terms of what are the consequences of pursuing each of these scenarios, and then talk about some of the benefits of each of those scenarios. Just to summarize, on the very last inside page here, we've tried to summarize the benefits of the scenarios, and the one calculation we made is the amount of benefit generated for every dollar spent on transit. So that was a way to, we had a report about this thick evaluating the scenarios, and as a way to take all the findings of that and kind of put it into one statistic, we calculated what we call the benefit-cost ratio. So for the Lifeline Plus scenario, that ratio is about $2.60 of benefit for every dollar spent, and then that goes up to about $3.10 for the smart growth scenarios. So that is, in a nutshell, the discussion of scenarios. As I said, we'll be making a recommendation very shortly to our board of directors. They'll be asking us then to continue developing the master plan, which will take place over the next 45 days or so, and then that plan will be adopted by our board. Be glad to take questions.
Mr. Rhodes?
Thanks for the presentation. I was able to participate in one of those plans, and I thank you and the rest of the staff for taking time to go out and talk with everybody. And obviously, I don't know which of those scenarios is going to be recommended, but whichever one is, there's still some significant funding that's going to be required.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering where you anticipate those funding sources to be and what the probability is of actually being able to put any of the three plans into place.
Sure. Yeah, I like to say there's this whole campaign is about countywide transit, and really there's three elements to countywide transit, and they all have to be in place. You need a fund, a plan, a funding strategy, and a governance strategy. The plan is the easy part. It's easy to draw lines on the map and say this service should be here and there. The funding efforts, those are underway. We will have, as part of our master plan document, kind of a description of what the funding options are, but then we plan a series of meetings, again, going throughout the county, talking to people about what are acceptable funding options. Obviously, to build a plan like this, you need to go to the taxpayers, and the question is what level and source of funding would be appropriate for these plans. And then the governance part, As you're probably aware, the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority right now is technically a City of Ann Arbor entity, and obviously with a county-wide system, you'd also want to have a county-wide governing authority. So again, there are talks underway to begin the discussion of how do we make this transition from a 7-member AATA board to some larger Washtenaw County Transit Board. And those discussions are going to be ongoing for some time.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? The other thing to point out, whatever, this is I think is it 30-year plan?
Yes.
So it would be a phased implementation. It wouldn't be all done. Some of the costs are pretty
right.
significant, and the discussions to date have been, it would be a phased program. Some of the, like the commuter rail we've been talking about for a number of years, so it's really tying into that whole effort and making it, again, more of a county-wide program. Because, one of the big issues is the aging population and accessibility to services for them. So hopefully we're going to be able to address that over time.
That's a huge issue. The population of seniors is going to double in the county.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, thank you very much for presenting. And
Well-
did you guys all get the website to look it up and find out more about it? And it's a really exciting program, and appreciate the AATA looking into reaching out into the county. So thank you.
Movingyouforward.org.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so we have on the agenda citizen comments on agenda items under the Open Meetings Act. Any citizen may come forward at this time and may comment or question on items that appear on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. That would also include this presentation for any of the students that have any feedback that they'd like to give to the AATA representative that's here. We would be very welcome to take any comments at this time. So, is there any citizen comments? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Mayor, I would like to remove item C1134 for council discussion.
Okay? Put that under new business. Is there anything else? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
Is that Mr. Law? Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve and adopt the items on the consent agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under public hearings, we have 1143. This is amendment of Kunststoff Technik Schneider Interior USA Incorporated Industrial Facilities Tax Exemption Certificate 2009-341 in the amount of $5,364,013. $5,364,013. We need a motion to acknowledge receipt of the February 17, 2011 memo from Finance Director Burgoyne and the February 21, 2011 memo from Robert Scull, Superintendent of Water Production and Pollution Control.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Second.
Move Morrow, second Ivy. Discussion. Mr. Burgoyne?
Well, Sure Trier is expanding their facility. They had previously come to this board and through the State Tax Commission to get a tax abatement for their expansion. It turns out that the timing has changed, and they're going to invest more and slightly different from what they had planned previously. So this was reviewed by the Special Projects Commission. There were a couple of questions on the environmental side, and Mr. Scull made an inspection and found out they are environmentally clean. So the recommendation is for them to receive 12 years of tax abatement starting at the end of their, to to amend the existing tax abatement, which is already in effect, and make it a 12-year tax abatement from the end of their intended construction, which is this fall, prior to December 30th. So that's the reason that I stated the dates in there, so that the State Tax Commission would be really clear about what's going on.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Burgoyne? Not, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge receipt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We need a motion to open the public hearing affording the public, applicant, and all taxing units an opportunity to be heard.
So moved.
Second.
Gearba, second to Har. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now open. Is there anybody that would like to speak to this issue?
Move to close.
Second.
Public hearing.
Move Ivy, second oral, to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now closed. We have a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution approving application of Kunststoff Technikscher and Trier USA for Incorporated for an amendment to Industrial Facilities Exemption Certificate Number 2009-341 for an existing facility as submitted, granting the amendment for a total project cost of $5,364,013 for a period of 12 years based on essential completion of the project, thus beginning December 31st, 2009, and ending December 30th, 2023, subject to the applicant entering into the tax abatement agreement as submitted. To authorize or not authorize the mayor and clerk to execute said tax abatement agreement as prepared and approved by Attorney Grossman. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve and adopt and authorize.
Support.
Move Law, second Rhodes. To approve and adopt and to authorize. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yes, I don't know if there's a representative from Sherrod Trier here? Oh, yep, sorry. I just like to say on the city's behalf, we appreciate your expanding again in the Saline community and look forward to a successful partnership with you. So thank you for coming tonight and thank you for your investment in our community. Item 1131, this would be the electric vehicle charging station relocation. We have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the March 7, 2011 memo from City Manager Campbell regarding the relocation of the electric vehicle charging station project from parking lot number 3 to parking lot number 2, which would be behind Murphy's Crossing, in the middle parking island on the east side near the north end of the island.
So moved.
Move to Har.
Second.
Second, Gearba. Okay, we have a map, so everybody has a general sense of where they're talking about doing this. City Manager Campbell, can you update us on?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I mentioned in my memo, in my communique as well, that if you may recall, when this was approved at the last City Council meeting for the electric vehicle charging station, the proposed location was actually in parking lot 3, which is directly south across the street. However, apparently misunderstanding when we met with for a second time. The first time was this fall when we took a walk with folks from DTE and went and talked about this location, or the original location on the south side in parking lot 3 as opposed to parking lot 2 behind Murphy's Crossing. However, when they went, DPW Director Fordyce accompanied them, and they said, "Well, geez, I don't know if this." There's a clause in the grant regulations that has to be in a quote-unquote prominent location, and apparently they didn't consider parking lot 3 prominent enough. So we met with them, staff met with them again this past Friday, and the space outlined in red on your map shows the location where they would like to see it, which is fine with us. The power, where you can come in from behind, if you come through Comerica, the drive-through there, that drive, there's a stand of trees, and that's where the power comes from. That's where the electrical panels are. and so it'll be a short, relatively short distance for direct bore to run the lines. But that's where they'd like to see it, and city staff has reviewed it. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Law?
Is the city being compensated at all for the loss of this parking spot? I don't know if that question was asked last time.
No, we're not.
Did the city have any input, I think you may have clarified that, Mr. Campbell, of where this is going to be located in this particular area? Or did DTE decide that this was probably the best place and that was the end of it?
Well, and I think Jeff is the one that went out with them, but I know that they were looking for one on the west side, but we talked him into the one on the east side of the current lot, but this is where they'd like it, but Jeff can elaborate more because he was actually with them.
Actually, their first selection within parking lot 2 was the spot immediately adjacent to the electric panels. So in that little bank of 4 or 5 spaces between the panels and the dumpster corral. But there are restrictions on those spaces based on the agreements that were in place to pull all that property together. So those spots are reserved for Comerica Bank during certain hours of the day. So we did not select that spot. Then we moved to the next closest uninhibited spot, which would be the one just flipped from the spot circled in red there, and had a little bit of a discussion about, whether that location was prominent enough and if it might be just as good to flip it so it's a little bit further away. So if we do run into a situation where the spot is not used frequently, it's a little bit less of a, I'm not sure what the right word is, but less of a burden on the businesses by having an empty spot close up front there. So there was some give and take, a little bit of discussion, and that's the spot we settled on.
Mayor, the only motion, I guess I understand it, is just to acknowledge receipt of this, and not to necessarily, I guess there's no motion necessary to approve this location, right?
Yeah, that's the motion
Well,
to approve
relocation.
location. Yes.
So it's just acknowledge receipt, okay.
Mr. Rhodes?
I would just say that after having discussions with city staff and with Detroit Edison representatives and some citizens within the community, this does seem like a reasonable compromise in order to qualify for the grant that is available to us. And so I would support this motion, this location.
To clarify, Councilmember Law, I will just ask the mover and the seconder to add and approve the recommended location because it isn't clear in the motion. It's just to acknowledge receipt, and the motion does actually request that the council consider approving the official location. So the motion really isn't clear enough. You need an actual approval of the location, correct?
That would make it cleaner, so there's no question.
So we're going to add if the mover and the seconder would be in agreement to this and approve the recommended location.
Well,
So that will answer your question, Councilmember Law. I know where you're heading. Yes, go ahead.
just so you know where I am then, I will not be supporting this motion, and I won't reiterate what I said last time, but I'll just say that we're not in the business of providing electric car charging stations. The city should not be in the business of that. No municipality should be in the business of that. Should be privately driven and entrepreneurial driven effort. And to lose a parking spot over this may not sound like a lot, but we're talking about having people coming downtown, and hopefully with that new restaurant opening up and all the other things that hopefully go on downtown with the Summerfest and all those things, this one parking spot may make a difference between someone, well, there's no parking, I guess we'll go to Ann Arbor or whatever. Just saying, I think it's a waste of money.
Further discussion on this motion? Mr. Ivey?
Thank you, Mayor. I share Councilmember Law's concerns. However, council has addressed the business of putting a charging station in the city, and the collective body decided by a vote that that would happen. So as an individual council member, I will support the vote by the collective body. I do think, for the record, that this location is more favorable than the previous. And although I have concerns about the business model that we are going to pursue with this charging station, I will be supporting this motion.
Councilmember Gearbox?
Just out of curiosity, did we discuss this with like the Saline Downtown Merchants Association and some of the other ones downtown?
We didn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just that. Did we speak with any of the actual businesses downtown to understand this?
We did not.
Further discussion on this motion? I will be supporting this motion, and I was not at the last meeting, and it's really not appropriate for me to speak to the motion that Mr. Ivory referred to. However, I will state that I consider this location and this grant that was given to this, or is being done for the city to have this location an economic development strategy to target potential electric car users around the state in the region that are need to have locations when they decide where they're going to go. And my understanding, there is already a map on the internet where if you have an electric car, you can identify charging stations, and therefore it will be an incentive for people to come to our downtown. So that's why I think this was a great idea. Plus, it's also supporting sustainable, thoughtful use of energy for our future. So is there further discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Under new business, item 1144, proposed FY 2011-2012 budgets for Saline Area Fire Department. It's a motion to acknowledge receipt of the March 2nd, 2011 memo from Finance Director Burgoyne regarding approval of Fire Department FY 12 operating and capital budgets, to acknowledge receipt of the February 15th, 2011 memos from the Saline Area Fire Department regarding operating percentages for fiscal year 2011 to 2012, and Saline Area Fire Department 2011-2012 proposed operating and capital improvement budgets, to approve or not approve the proposed Saline Area Fire Department operating and capital improvements budgets for fiscal year 2011-2012, and to recommend that the Saline Area Fire Department Executive Board adopt or not adopt said budgets.
Move to approve and adopt.
Second.
Move Gearbox, second Morrow. Mr. Burgoyne?
Well, the cost to the city remains pretty steady over the years. Our share percentage of the cost decreases slowly as the other communities gain in population and road miles and so forth. It remains to our advantage to do this through the tax rather than special assessment. So that's the recommendation.
Are our costs going up? Can you speak to that, please?
No, they're really flat. They've been flat for, I think the total might have gone down slightly, but our costs have been very flat for quite a while.
Is there discussion on this motion? Being on the board of the fire department, I'd just like to point out, I think that the management of the fire board is being very well done compared to some of the other regions that are really getting some serious escalating costs. I think we were actually one of the original fire districts in the region, and it's been a very well-managed process, and over time we've managed to maintain a relatively low budget and a very high service level. So I appreciate the work that the fire chief and the firefighters are doing to keep the costs down. Is there further discussion on this motion? Mr. Morrow.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just echo your sentiments, and I want to make sure that our citizens know we have an exceptionally well-run fire department. It's to our staff and our department heads' credit. I would add, it's not really germane to this motion, but I want to articulate it. And that is, I was speaking to some citizens recently about the special assessment for, to fund our portion of the Saline Area Fire Department's budget. And people are, I think, generally, myself included, when I first ran for council, pretty naive about that mechanism. And I was wondering if something could be written up in one of the upcoming FYIs to clarify the way in which we fund our portion of the Saline Area Fire Department's budget, because using this mechanism as opposed to the special assessment benefits all taxpayers, and I think they ought to know that.
Yeah, in a nutshell, the special assessment voted was 1 mil, and by going through the tax share basis, we use 0.82 of a mil,
Right.
because it's spread also to plant and equipment, industrial plant and equipment. But we
Still
can
benefit.
put something
Yeah,
FYI.
I think that's definitely a benefit to our taxpayers.
Okay, is there further discussion on the motion? Motion is to approve and adopt the budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1145, notion of determination of mayor and council salaries for 2011 and 2012. This would be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the February 24th, 2011 memo from City Clerk with the notice of determination from the Local Officers Compensation Commission setting forth the salaries for mayor, mayor pro tem, and council for 2011 and 2012, with said salaries to become effective 30 days from February 18th, 2011, unless rejected by council within the said 30-day period.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Move, Councilmember Law. We have a second?
I'll support.
Second, Rhodes. This is just to acknowledge receipt. Discussion?
So this is a two-stage process that we're going through here, is that correct?
Well,
So
it's
we have to
every,
do the first one, and then we take action on the second one.
Right, this is just acknowledge receipt of the memo, and if there's any questions or comments about the memo, I think this would be the time to discuss it. As you can see from the memo, this is every other year on the odd years when they review the compensation compares to other communities, and so we bring this up every other year. I guess that's it. Okay, discussion? Mr. Gearba, Councilmember Gearba.
I saw where they recommended the suggestion that we move to an annual basis of reviewing these type of things because of the budget, and I would like to support that. I also, at this time, because even though this may be more figuratively than a symbolic motion to not accept their recommendation, has no effect on what their recommendation is, but I think because we don't know what the level of the state funding and such is, doing any kind of increase at this time does not make sense.
Mr. Rhodes.
And my comments also would be more germane to the second part of this motion, that I don't believe we should accept the recommendations. We're asking our employees and others to get by on what their compensation levels are. And it would be inappropriate, I do believe, for council to accept more.
Sure. Councilmember Morrow, did you have your hand raised earlier?
I'll speak to the next motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So currently, we have a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt of the memo from the Local Officers Compensation Commission. Is there further discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we have a motion to accept or reject the salaries for 2011 and 2012 as determined by the Local Officers Compensation Commission. If rejected, the salaries will remain at the 2010 rate unless otherwise specified.
Move to reject.
Second.
Moved Ivy, second Terhar. Discussion. To reject. Mr. Morrow.
Yeah, I enthusiastically, endorse this proposal, and I'm not going to go on and on because I think I kind of beat this dog to death 2 years ago. But to sort of second comments made by my colleagues, Mr. Rhodes and Mr. Gearbaugh, I do think this is obviously just a symbolic motion, a symbolic gesture. But symbolic gestures are important in politics, and I think by allowing an increase in our salaries, it sends the wrong message. And it may send the message to our constituents, to the residents of the city of Saline, that we have sort of an entitlement mindset. and that may in turn further diminish the respect and confidence people have in government, which is currently sort of at an all-time low. So again, this isn't the most important issue before us this evening, but I do enthusiastically support the motion and urge my colleagues to reject the increases for 2011-2012.
Is there further discussion on this motion? I also support the motion to reject this, but for the students here, you might want to know what we're talking about. We currently, as mayor, I make $4,000 a year, and the last time, 2 years ago, when we had this recommended, we did not take an increase for the last 2 years. So the recommendation was from the Local Officers Commission, Compensation Commission, which is 3 volunteers that look at salaries around the state for elected officials. Currently, we sit at mayor's makes $4,000 a year. The mayor pro tem makes $2,470 a year, $75 a year, and each council member makes $2,175. And what the recommendation was for the compensation from the Compensation Commission was for it to stay the same for next year, and then for the following year to increase from $4,000 to $4,120, for Mayor Pro Tem to increase from $2,475 to $2,550, and for council to increase from $2,175 to $2,240. This is for an annual pay for the service. While I am in agreement with this recommendation to reject at this time, I will tell you that every council member and myself and the Mayor Pro Tem are highly dedicated and spend many, many hours. So I would guarantee that this is a volunteer job, except that we do take a little bit of compensation for that. So I just wanted to let everybody know, since you are in the audience, that you know what we are doing here, because we really talked about whether or not to accept or reject, and not really what we were accepting or rejecting. So,
Very good.
is there any further discussion on this motion? All in favor to reject the salary recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1146, this is an application for Washtenaw County Economic Development and Energy Revolving Loan Fund. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the Washtenaw County Economic Development and Energy Revolving Loan Fund application outline, and also the March 3rd, 2011 memo from Public Works Director Fordyce to authorize or not authorize staff to make application to the Washtenaw County Economic Development and Energy Revolving Loan Fund for 2 energy efficiency projects, the photovoltaic system on the roof of City Hall and the LED streetlight conversion project for streetlights on North and South Ann Arbor Street. Do we have a motion?
Move to authorize.
Second. Move Rhodes, second Tahar. Just for discussion purposes, I wanted to let everybody know that we did receive an email about this, and so I had asked Mr. Campbell to put this on the agenda because, as you know, we did apply for EECBG, which is a block grant for the Energy and Efficiency Block Grant Program that was authorized by the federal government last year, and tried to access some money for these 2 projects. So this is a county revolving loan fund that's a non-interest loan. So if we wanted to look at doing these projects, I thought staff should report out on what they're recommending. So, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll turn this over to Mr. Fordyce here momentarily, but just a quick summary. As the Mayor mentioned, these particular 2 projects are from the ECBG grant applications that we applied for a while back that were denied. This funding is, the funding through the county was money they received through the EECBG funding process, and I believe they weren't able to end up, even though they awarded, I think they ended up not being able to possibly do with what they had intended to do with the money. So they requested, solicited projects from communities in the county, and at that time they were talking about, they weren't sure if they're going to do a grant or a loan, and obviously it came out to be a loan. Since, as the mayor said, she'd requested to put it on, and staff has been able to have some conversations, and part of the urgency a little bit is if City Council wants to go this direction, the application is due the 11th of March, so we wouldn't be able to bring it back to you before the next meeting. But having said that, like I said, staff has discussed this in a little more depth, and we have some other things maybe to consider. So as far as possible phasing of the project or projects, and possibly other mechanisms to fund those. So I'll turn over to Jeff and let him, as he's our kind of our efficiency expert for staff.
Yeah, these two projects are the same projects that we applied to the EECBG grant program. And so the cost estimates are 18 months old at this point. There may be some opportunities in here where we can reduce the prices a little bit and improve the paybacks that I've shown in here. But the essential projects are, one here, a 12 kilowatt photovoltaic system that would generate roughly 14,000 kilowatt hours per year. And there's several DTE incentives that are available for solar installations right now. So upon completion of construction, DTE would provide $28,800 payment, and then a slightly more than $1,500 payment per year for 20 years. And that payment is essentially buying our renewable energy credits from us. So when you generate electricity with a solar panel, you not only generate electrons, but you also create this imaginary thing called a renewable energy credit, and there's a market for those. So DTE would be buying those from us and then using those credits to address some of their coal-burning sins elsewhere. So those payments all together, with an estimated energy savings of almost another $1,500 per year, DTE incentives, electricity generation, and reducing our energy bill here would be a little over $88,000 over the 20-year life of the system. 18 months ago when I put this project together, the cost estimate was $108,000. So not quite paying for itself, but with the assumption that electric rates will stay the same. Since I put the memo together, I had a conversation with an installer, and he suggested that now we might be able to do the system for as little as $84,000, which would change the payback calculations dramatically. And the payback calculations also change quite a bit if you add some percentage of electric rate increases. Just in the 18 months between these two estimates, when I prepared it for the grant application, the electrical savings was $1,350 per year. Now it's $1,480, just on the rate changes in the past 18 months. So those are changing. Then the other project was LED streetlight conversion, and that for the grant program, we're planning on converting all of the lights along North and South Ann Arbor between Bennett Street and Willis. That includes 17 DTE-owned traditional street lights, some variation of Cobra head or a wire-hung light fixture, and then 38 of our city-owned decorative fixtures in the downtown blocks on 100 North and 100 South. And these numbers, again, are from the grant application based on discussions with DTE at that time, and with what was available on the private market for conversion of our decorative fixtures at that time. Just prior to the meeting, Mr. Gearbach handed me an article about a conversion that Ann Arbor has just completed, and just crunching their numbers real quick as I was sitting in the audience, those conversions were done at a much lower per unit price than what I have in this proposal. So there may have been something that's changed in the market, or DTE has something new available that dramatically reduces the price. So again, unfortunately I don't have those numbers, but the LED conversion project might come in dramatically cheaper than what I've presented here. We also had discussions amongst staff today of the possibility of just shrinking the project, maybe doing just the city-owned fixtures or just the DTE fixtures, doing some smaller sample size to see how the process goes, how the lights look, how they're received by the citizens, before going gung-ho and doing a whole street or a whole district. And then another issue that we talked about this morning was if we want to do these projects, maybe just do them without getting a loan. It is a 0% interest loan. However, it is funded with stimulus dollars and includes all of the strings that stimulus dollars have with them. So there's a somewhat of an administrative burden in terms of reporting and contract requirements and various other issues. So it's free money, but free money with strings attached. So there may be alternate ways we could, if council is interested and wants to pursue a project, these particular projects or similar projects, then we may be able to fund those in-house. TIFA dollars.
If I might, Madam Mayor, also we discussed the private sector with the tax credits.
Right. Another alternative for the solar installations is an investor-owned installation with a power purchase agreement. It's relatively complex, but becoming more and more common, where in order for municipalities to enjoy the tax benefits that are attached to solar installations, they partner with a private entity. Then that private entity actually owns the system. They lease space from us. We agree to buy the power from them. They get to enjoy the tax benefits, and it reduces a lot of the administrative hassles for the city. It reduces some of the risk, but it does reduce some of the benefits also. But it still ends up being potentially a good fit because you basically get a turnkey system that is owned and operated by someone else. We get a steady rate of electricity over a 20-year agreement, and all the environmental benefits are still there.
Discussion. Mr. Law.
What you said there, Jeff, intrigued me, and because there's that word entrepreneurial and private, I thought you mentioned as well. Where was that for the electric car station? But that's the other. That's another matter. So that's what I'm talking about. That's what I've been saying. So we're taking one and having DTE and the city run it, and now we're taking this and not suggesting that's what you're suggesting, but you brought that up as a possible option. Mm-hmm. I just see the two conflicting entities. Anyway, I want to ask about the costs up here. You say the upfront payment is $28,800, annual payments of $1,503 for 20 years. And maybe I'm not doing the greatest of math here, but the construction of the system, which granted you say could be much lower than the $108,000 you have quoted here. Mm-hmm. Still, the taxpayers, if I'm not mistaken, would be on the hook for sizable cost, at least initially. Am I reading that correctly?
Right. Well, the construction cost, yes, that would all be paid up front, and then you would get the initial payment from DTE, and then all the other payments are over the next 20 years, annual payments and annual savings over 20 years. So there certainly is an upfront cost. And at the $108,000 construction figure, again, assuming steady electric rates, they don't quite meet. There's a $20,000 cap. I think, if we threw in a 4 or 5% electric rate increase, that gap would probably close. But I didn't have time to run that analysis.
Well, again, I take what you say for what it's worth on face value, Mr. Fordyce, but we don't have a crystal ball to obviously know what those rates are going to be, and certainly that could change a lot of the dynamics. I forgot what I was going to say. I'm done for now, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Morrow?
Mr. Fordyce, I want to address the solar panels on the roof of City Hall. When you first came before us to recommend that we apply for the EBCG grants, I was always a little cautious and less than enthusiastic about the solar panels on the roof. I am very supportive of the LED streetlights, and I like your recommendation or your suggestion about starting small, developing a sample area, gauging the public's opinion of that, and then moving forward. But if I read your memorandum correct and interpreted what you said here this evening correctly, am I correct, in saying that your prognostications indicate that by putting solar panels on the roof of City Hall, we would reap approximately $1,500 in savings from DT per year?
That's in a reduced electric bill.
Okay.
Yes. So
that's
the dollar value of the electricity generated.
And then, have you crunched any numbers? What is the approximate maintenance cost of having the solar panel system on our roof annually?
I don't have a good figure on that.
Okay.
I believe that it's a very solid state system. There aren't any moving parts, so it should be reasonably low cost.
But you don't have specific numbers on that?
Okay.
And additionally, even though you just threw it out this evening, I am intrigued by this private-public partnership regarding the installation of solar panels. So I'm a little uncomfortable with the current proposal as it reads relating to the solar panels on the roof of City Hall. But again, I am supportive of the LED and recommend Jeff's suggestion of starting with a small sample area, gauging the public's opinion, and then moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
I have a question. It seems to me, you said that the cost of the photovoltaic, the revised that you got today, was an estimate of $84,000?
Yes.
So there's only $230,000 for the whole county for this interest-free loan. If we take $84,000 and if we put something like this in, we would get almost $29,000 after it gets put in from an upfront payment?
Correct.
So if we applied for something like this through the county and it costs $84,000, we would have a $56,000 cost that we would be applying for approximately. Okay. So if we pay that back, my understanding is we would be allowing repayment to be projected through annual energy savings, and if they're saying that we're going to save $1,500, and then on top of that, we're going to be getting paid $1,500 by the DTE, we're actually going to be making money over those 20 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So I would like to more seriously look at this, and I think if you can make the numbers work. I know that the date is the 11th. I also was wondering if the public-private partnership, because I think that's also a really good idea, but I also think we should access interest-free money as long as we're saving the money that we're spending over the time. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Right? So, I mean, it's a net wash, actually. We're going to benefit from this program if I'm understanding that correctly. And then the public-private one, I would like to see the rec center looked at for that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sort of, our sister city in Germany has almost every roof over there has photovoltaic. And the house that I stayed at, I might have mentioned when we did this application last year, actually receives money in their home, offsetting their costs. And they actually make money now off their photovoltaics on their roof because Germany's in a very tough, they rely on natural gas, which comes from Russia, and the line is precarious at times. So they have moved very significantly towards alternatives to the classic coal and gas, and so they're looking at a lot of different alternatives. So I've been sort of interested in this program for a while. But it seems to me that if the way I understand it, you might need to maybe we need to, if we do a motion to this, it would have to be that, it would be in fact that we would actually be netting, we would be receiving money, not, paying out more money, because that's a significant decrease from what you had originally said, and if that's the case, which is, I know the timing on this was really tight, but not only will it save us money over the next 20 years, but through the life of, and as you said in there, that doesn't even include if there's an electric rate increase, which there usually is. So that would be my recommendation. The LED program is also, I think, a really good program, but I think my personal feeling would be that we need to look at these, all these technologies are changing pretty dramatically and becoming more and more cost efficient. So if there's a way to address these other like public-private partnerships or other incentive programs that are entrepreneurial too, I think the more the merrier. So, Councilmember Gearba.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor, on this when I was cranking the numbers on that. And even looking at a 3 to 5% increase in the cost of what the energy is going to be, this would have a payback in that period of time. The question is, will this product last 20 years? According to Jeff, he feels it is. I do know under the maintenance issue, there'll be the need to clean off the, to wash those off because the dirt accumulates and to make them better efficiency and such. One of my things is I'm looking at the LED project. Having seen what's going on in Ann Arbor, there is a different, the lights and how the colors and everything is. I guess I wasn't here and I don't understand if we're going to be just doing downtown on the South Ann Arbor, North Ann Arbor Street, we're going to have white lights and then we're going to have the sodium lights on the street. I would rather see that we did a project where we'd have the lights replaced in City Hall, the parks, the rec center, or whatever else, where they're more located in those areas than to do it downtown, because I think it's just going to be just a bad approach. But, and also the question I had on this was looking at the payback on this. And of course, if you dealt with the same issue with a 5% return, the payback isn't as soon, but I do believe that the cost of the lights and such is shown in Ann Arbor. Their payback is over 4 years, but they're getting the same benefit. They're getting $28,000 from DTE to offset a cost of $56,000. So, but we wouldn't be having that benefit of this, only a $1,700. So the one project I see is fine. The other one, I'd like to see it maybe done a little differently. And I agree with the mayor that if we had some private or something that would help potentially look at testing some of their devices and things, we might be able to take that better off. But at this point, if there's money that is available for a loan that's zero interest, yes, it is stimulus money, but the idea is we're going to have to pay it back. It's not a complete freebie, but the wish is of how I think people would look at this and benefit from this would be a great benefit to the city.
Councilmember Rhodes.
I supported this motion for a couple of reasons. One is that we just adopted a goal of being a sustainable city in our next fiscal year, and this is a step towards that. The other is that it's not often that one can get 0% loan, and so that's certainly worthwhile looking at. And I understand that the potential costs looking out over the next 15, 20 years, who knows where those are actually going to be, but based on past practice, it does appear that our savings are very likely to be there. And then just to comment on the question about maintenance of the photovoltaic cells, I've had some on the roof of my building for 3 years now, and while this is definitely, it's not definitive, I've not done anything to them other than climb up on a roof once a year to make sure they were still there.
Councilmember Law.
There's a lot of what-ifs, I think, in this whole scenario, and, well, Mayor, you pointed out some of the potential savings. I still think there are a lot of what-ifs, and I don't feel comfortable in pursuing this for other reasons, obvious, but the maintenance costs issue, which Councilmember Marl raised, I think, while many around the table believe that it's very minimal, I would not feel comfortable in proceeding with this without actually knowing what those maintenance costs are, whether they are small, medium, or large. I think taxpayers, we owe it to them to have that out in the open and let them know what it is and how much it is, even if it is minuscule. There's no such thing as free money. I don't know where you're getting this idea that it's free. It's not free money. And Councilmember Marl mentioned about the proposed compensation for the for council and the mayor as being more of symbolic. I still view this as just symbolic in many ways. I am intrigued with the entrepreneurial and the private aspect, as I pointed out earlier from Mr. Fordyce, is what he mentioned. That intrigues me. But again, getting into the DTE angle of things, we just went off with the electric cars thing, and now we're talking about solar panels. We can just name the city hall the DTE Saline City Hall if we want to put a sign out. And it seems that they're involved with a lot of things that they are getting involved with. So I obviously will not support this.
Further discussion? Mr. Campbell?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for a quick clarification, reference the LED lighting. That is in a TIFA district. They're in the TIFA district. So while TIFA dollars could be used to purchase those lights, they could not. TIFA dollars could not be used to pay back the loan because of the way the wording in the TIFA plan, the development plan. However, again, could be so it would come from general fund dollars to repay any loan. Just a point of clarification.
Mayor?
Yes.
Quick question.
Councilmember Gearbox?
Mr. Burgoyne, you looked like you had a statement that you could say about the funding. Was that it, or was there anything else?
Well, there's something else. If you do $108,000 worth of lights on Ann Arbor Street, you're right away doing all of them. But if you do them through TIFA, not only don't they cost half as much to the city, but in addition to that, you can choose what you want to do. You can do it 1/4 of them. You can do what you want and schedule it over more than 1 year. So for the lighting in a TIFA area, this is not a good choice. But the borrowing also has some constraints on it, and those are costs. The interest may be zero. The interest rate we're getting now on our money is near zero also. So the cost for us to take our money is not much higher than zero right now. And these administrative costs may cause you to have a higher amount in bidding or some constraints or so forth, and there's follow-up and so forth. So it's near zero, but it's got some cost.
No, I appreciate it. That's kind of more the information I wanted to hear.
Councilman Bryan?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify that approving this motion simply authorizes staff to apply for the loan, and that we don't necessarily have to take the money when assuming that we qualified, and that this project, apparently we have some discussion here this evening about what we should do. It's a scalable project, as you pointed out, Mr. Fordyce, and there seems to me to be a wide range of opinion on what we should cover, what we shouldn't cover. Let me ask you this, sir. Do you have to be that specific in the application? Or can you kind of be nebulous and then, assuming we get the loan, scale it down to where everybody's happy?
I believe the application, they want to know fairly precisely how much energy is going to be saved. So the overall size of the system, we'd have to know that, and that would then drive all the dollar figures from there. So they do want in the application the amount of energy saved and a payback term. So we would, I believe, we'd be better off applying with a specific project.
And that deadline is approaching rapidly, and we are
the 11th.
We are not really in a position to toggle the numbers and change what we've already presented.
There's
Is that true?
limited opportunities to refine the costs.
Okay, I am a little reluctant, but I will support this motion to approve.
I think, I don't have a sense that both project, a couple of things. First of all, again, I asked Mr. Campbell, he was out of town. This was a reminder that the loan was expiring or coming due on March 11th, so I asked for this to be put on, and that's why we're sort of creating as we're walking through this. And the more I'm looking at this, the more, and from the feedback I'm hearing from City Council, I think that it would be more recommended to go apply, and also for the fact that there's only $230,000, and I would expect the county would want to have more than one project that they award. I would recommend that we go just for the photovoltaic system. There seems to be a lot of questions around the LED streetlight conversion, and a need to have further discussion on that project concept. And I think that as long as we, the way I'm reading this, and there probably needs to be some clarity around this, but basically what it's saying is the payment is to be projected through annual energy savings. And if you're saying that we're going to save $1,500 a year approximately for this, and on top of that, so that would be what we have to pay back every year, and then the DTE is going to be paying us $1,500 every year. So there's actually no out-of-pocket cost for us except, but I don't think there is any. Is there? I'm not, right? So I think
this is
if we can
assuming
base it on that assumption, and I would say don't apply if that assumption is incorrect. But it seems to me, I appreciate what you're saying, Councilmember Ivy. I don't really think that, I personally wouldn't want to apply for something without the intent to do true due diligence and make our best attempt to take it, because there might be other regions that really would be, utilizing this loan program. So if this council is not prepared to access this loan and doesn't want to try to make a commitment with the assumption that it's not costing us more than, even if it does cost us $1,000 a year, that's a nominal for what we're going to be making long-term for our return. So I think that this actually is a pretty good program. But I wouldn't recommend personally, and I wouldn't want to vote for this motion that is an application for both projects, because there's not enough money in the pool, and I also don't think council in general is supportive of the LED program at this time. So further discussion on this motion. Councilmember Rhodes.
I was just going to make the comment, and it sort of relates to what you said. I think that we did a little trial effort with a couple LED fixtures a year or so ago, and kind of got mixed reaction
Yeah,
to those.
we mounted 2 different fixtures in the 100 block of North Ann Arbor, and personally I wasn't satisfied with either of them. I didn't like the light distribution or the colors that they presented, but that's just 2. There are many different options out there, and the technology keeps getting better every year. So that was 20 months ago. There's new products out. They keep refining the technology, so I'm sure we could find something that would work in terms of color and distribution and cost, but it's not a commodity type product. It's you really have to specify a particular one and make sure that one satisfies your needs.
Further discussion on this motion. Do you want to leave this motion as it stands? The mover and the seconder? You want to start over? The mover was Councilmember Rhodes, the seconder was Councilmember Tahar.
Yeah, I'm thinking. There are elements that I like of both, but I also understand the position of limited total funding available and some issues with LED lighting, and its distribution in the city. So I guess that I would, if the seconder agrees, I would agree to the revision to only apply for the photovoltaic system.
Yes, I agree.
So our restated motion would be to authorize or not authorize staff to make application to the Washington County Economic Development and Energy Revolving Loan Fund for the photovoltaic system on the roof of City Hall. Do you want to put anything around cost assumptions, assuming this is at no additional cost? That will be difficult to explain in the application, right? I guess this is enough. That would be when we take the actual, whether or not we get the loan or not. Okay. Further discussion on this motion? Councilmember Morrow.
Yeah, I guess with some reluctance, I'll support the motion based on comments made by Mr. Rhodes and also by Mr. Fordyce. Some of my concerns have been alleviated. However, Mr. Fordyce, I would like to see some numbers crunched as to what our prognostication is for annual maintenance for the solar panels. In addition, I don't want to see the city give up on LED lighting in our downtown. I think we could make a better good faith effort to investigate and look at varying types of LED lighting, because I think it would be a tangible benefit not only to our downtown but also to our citizens. So I would hope that in the future something would be forthcoming relating to a recommendation of installing LED lights, in some portion of our downtown. Thank you, Mayor.
Further discussion on this motion? Okay, so everybody knows how the motion's written, right? Do I have to read it again? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item 1134, thank you, Mr. Fordyce. It's a motion to approve and adopt the resolution in opposition to Senate Bill 34 as submitted, which bill would eliminate all personal property taxes with no revenue offset to local governments, which would seriously impact local budgets and the ability to provide essential services.
Move to approve and adopt.
Move Ivy, do we have a second?
Second.
Second Gearbot discussion. Councilmember Ivy?
Thank you, Mayor. I am totally in support of the resolution. There are a couple minor editorial changes, however, that I hope we could consider as a friendly amendment. And the Michigan Municipal League has recommended that the resolution, in addition to those stated in the very last paragraph, they've also recommended that we send it to our state representative and to Senate Majority Leader, our state Senator Randy Richardville. So I would like to be sure that those two are on the distribution list in that last paragraph. The other question I had about the resolution was the paragraph about budget planning for 2011 and 2012 is well underway, and we've already figured these in. My understanding is that the tax would be eliminated effective January 1st, 2012, and I question whether 2011 is even at issue here, and maybe if we could strike 2011 and just let that read FY 2012, I think we'd be in the right ballpark. Would you agree with that, Mr. Burgoyne?
I don't know the timing of the language but in the bill, but if the bill does say January 2012, that would be FY13 taxes.
Yeah.
So you would be correct that that's not the year coming up, but the following year. If that's what the bill says, I don't know the language.
Well, I believe the bill is very small, very simple, and I think the wording is after December 31st, 2011. But I'd have to go back and verify that. The resolution is modeled after one that was provided by the League, and I noticed a good many other villages and cities throughout the state. And comparing some of their figures on the impact of this to our figures, boy, oh boy. I mean, there are some that are going to see a decline in taxable value of over 10% in the next year or so, and we're only showing 4%. So
We're in
I
relative
think we should consider ourselves very fortunate in that regard. But this is certainly part of Senator Knopf's that proposed this. I think he wanted to put it in play because he thought we should consider everything should be on the table. And the governor certainly hasn't embraced this, but it's up to the legislature. And yes, we definitely need to let the legislature know how we feel about this.
So why don't we just say we can have the staff look into whether or not the FY, what would be the relevant dates to fill that, to correct that if it needs to be corrected for that FY 2011, the budget planning line, if you could look into that and just verify that. So if we could approve this and if it's necessary to change the dates, staff would change the dates. Is there further discussion on this motion? Councilmember Gearlow.
Mayor, I just wanted to highlight the couple of numbers in here because I think it's probably good to let the public know that the loss of these personal property taxes would mean about 1.8, according to this, $1.8 million, which equals 22% of our general fund budget. If this occurs, we're going to have to look at other sources or completely eliminate a lot of activities that the city provides now. So it's a great issue that I know people want to see change in the state and how we fund revenue and everything, but potentially this is going to come out of the backs of not only our public employees, but us and everything else. So there's got to be some thought into how this is happening, and I think some of this is just being pushed through without the concerns of what's going to happen at the end.
Well, the other thing also to add to that is it's to get rid of personal property tax, and they've already decreased state revenue sharing up to almost $1 million per year over the last decade. So it's, every which way we turn, there are capabilities to get revenues are being assaulted, I guess is the best way to put it. So yeah, we're very constricted, and the personal property tax is a pretty important tool to a lot of communities around the state. So the fact that they're talking about eliminating personal property taxes without giving us a tool to have some kind of other form of revenue that, and to be fair, I'm a little concerned about that because the whole Proposal A was established and statutory revenue was, part of that. Okay, we'll do Proposal A and limit your capabilities to tax in exchange for giving you statutory revenue sharing. Now they're saying they want to get rid of it. So, and they've already cut it back over $1 million, and that's one thing that has caused us to, increase our millage a couple of years ago. So it's been really rough time, and it's going to be very challenging this next year, I think, to figure out how to equalize the constraints of the state and not to be too debilitating to local government. So further discussion on this. Councilmember Ivey.
Thank you, Mayor. One other comment. Some might claim, well, it's hypocritical for this council to extend a 12-year IFT tax exemption to a company, a local company. If we can do that for one local company, why can't we just, excuse all these companies from these taxes? But I think it's a very different situation. I think we want to be selective about who gets these sort of tax breaks. And the current approach that we use gives us that ability to be selective. And the claim by Senator Knopf is that this would help our economy because it would encourage businesses to hire. Well, there's no guarantee that businesses are going to take that money that they save, not having to pay this taxes, and hire more employees. There's no guarantee that would happen.
Well, I just push back on that and say, it's pretty well documented that quality of life is one of the main reasons companies move to a community. And if you take 20% of your budget, just like if you're in your home, if your home was cut 20%, there would be no quality of life. And I think we would have a really big difficulty competing with other states and communities that are investing in the things that people want to see, not only services, but this is a whole other issue around what's going on with the schools, too, and it's very alarming. But, this is one of many, many areas. I have another letter that we're going to talk about shortly, so... is there further discussion? Did you have a comment, Mr. Campbell?
Well, I was just going to comment, just for point of information. I think as of last week, I believe the information that I saw was that the actual, this bill was being removed short term, and at some point in the future we'll bring it back. But I think in lieu of, because of Governor Snyder's proposed budget and the huge changes that would come into effect if that is adopted, I think they're holding off a little bit potentially. But again, they certainly didn't say that it was going to go away, that it was going to come back.
Is there further discussion on this motion? Motion is to approve and adopt the resolution. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion items, do we have any commission or committee reports from council members? Councilmember Law?
Youth Council last month, they're preparing for their middle school lockdown, which happens on March the 19th. We're also preparing to nominate the Youth of the Year recipient. In fact, they met this evening to discuss just that as part of the Saline Salutes event that's going to be happening in April. So no doubt they have their work cut out for them as far as narrowing down a worthy recipient. And I'll keep everyone updated as to, well, who that may be. Maybe we'll wait until the actual event or close to it. The Planning Commission also last week, I believe, met, and the long-awaited master plan is going to be coming before the Commission for a public hearing on April 13th. As well, the overlay district got some discussion. That's for the downtown area, and basically the motion that was approved was to hire Carlisle Wortman, of course, our planner, Doug Lewan, is our point man on that group, and the commission agreed to hire his group and have him, as of course, as the main facilitator for this overlay district, which will be, I would think, starting off with discussions sometime in the spring with community meetings. Certainly the community is we want to hear from them as to what they think about this proposal.
Councilman Rhodes.
The Environmental Commission's last meeting was devoted to developing a shared vision, goals, and then objectives to meet those goals, and those items will be voted on at the upcoming Environmental Commission meeting. We also decided to submit an article from the Environmental Commission for each edition of the FYI. If there was space to put that in, we hope there would be. And then we are still working with the BDA on the design and color scheme for recycled containers for downtown. Those are the major elements that we talked about.
Councilmember Ivey.
Thank you, Mayor. The Saline Parks Commission met on Tuesday, February 15th. Among the items on the agenda were reviewing a draft of a new brochure which provides basic information about the city's parks. Commissioners offered suggestions to revise. The brochure we expect will be available this spring. The Commission also discussed preliminary plans for this year's spring cleanup project, which will take place on Saturday, May 14th at 2 of our smaller city parks. And the Commission would like to invite all those citizens who are available on that morning to put on a pair of gloves and join in to help tidy up the grounds at Canterbury Park and Marlpool Park. After conferring with city officials, the Commission also decided that beginning in March, the chairperson will conduct meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order, but now has the option to use a general consent approach in lieu of a voice vote in deciding routine business items. Thank you.
Any other? Councilmember Tahar.
The Arts and Culture Committee met on February 14th, and the discussion of the public art project design continues.
Any other council member reports? I'll just report out the EDC met, the Alphabet Boards met last week, and there was a presentation received by Cindy Zubko, who's the chair of the BDA, about the Main Street program that I know you're all familiar with, where that's moving forward. There was a very successful retreat held a couple of weeks ago, and basically they're moving forward with creating a 501c3 for establishing a Michigan Main Street organization in Saline. So I know we'll be hearing lots more about that. There's a big rollout going on with that. So are there any other commission reports? Any other reports and announcements? You want to talk about your thing at Lansing last week?
I can, sure. I think Mayor Pro Tem Marl had something, but I can.
Okay. Well, we'll go around. Go ahead.
Okay. As you recall, this past fall, Mayor Driscoll, Mayor Pro Tem Marl, and I attended some kind of a preliminary or precursor to some training, for entrepreneurial training at the league, put on by the Saline Institute. And it's called the Trinity of Management, and essentially it's a philosophy. It's for Ernesto Sarola, the founder. It's a way of life, but it's training to help entrepreneurs or hopeful entrepreneurs. Basically, with the premise that there's three areas. There's the product, or as he calls it, the passion. So the person that has the product to sell, the widget, if you will. Then there's, of course, marketing, and then there's financial management. So oftentimes you see people, maybe they have something, an entrepreneur is invented something or a service, a product, whatever, and maybe they can sell it, possibly, maybe not. But typically speaking, the financial management's not there, so they end up maybe selling a few things, but then eventually they end up kind of failing or going bust, if you will. If the other thing to look at is that when you pick up a biography or an autobiography of some of these successful entrepreneurs, none of them have ever done it by themselves. They've always had at least one other or a couple people to help them. So this is essentially to be a resource for folks. And entrepreneurs, they for various reasons, sometimes they may not come forward because they're trying to do something on their own, or they don't want somebody to steal their idea or whatever. But this is again, it's building relationships and trying to establish throughout the community resources of folks that can come and stand beside them, whether it be a marketing person or a financial manager to help them, and then have those folks build a relationship together and build a company, that type of thing. So but the other thing that's interesting, and the mayor and I were talking, the approach is the Sarola approach, the Trinity Management approach is for them to come to you as opposed to you. Because so often the example he gave was years ago. Ernesto Sarola is from Italy, and he was in essentially Italy's version of the Peace Corps years ago, and they went to Africa. And they essentially went to this village and told them how they should do things. Told them, well, you should. This is how you should plant your crops right here and by the river. And how come you haven't done this? So they planted, and the villagers are just sitting there watching them. And so they go and they tell them how they're going to do it, and they plant their crops. And just as it's harvest time, a whole herd of hippos come out of the river and destroy the crops. And so that's why, the tribesmen are saying that's why we didn't do that, so you didn't know everything. And so that's the approach, is we're here to help, but we don't want to, push too hard or kind of shove it down your throat, if you will. So there's a balance there. As the mayor and I were talking, well, the cart or the horse, how do they know you're there if you don't? So that's one of the things that I thought we might talk about at the joint chamber meeting as well. And I'm also going to, as I told the mayor, I haven't had a chance yet today, but some of my colleagues that were at the training as well. It was limited. There's only 16 of us there, but it was some pretty good. Helped get inside the mind, if you will, a little better. Help better understand where they're coming from, and because we do and unfortunately, hasn't been as many the last couple of years as far as activity. People coming, to say the city manager's office saying, "Hey, I got a great idea," and so we certainly welcome that anytime. And now we certainly have some more abilities and skills to help. But in the past, sometimes people can bring some pretty what some would think outlandish ideas, and so this has certainly better prepared me, I think, to even what I might think at first blush of outlandish may actually be pretty positive opportunity. So so looking forward to that. And the other thing with the training is it's a 12. They also will mentor us for 12 months. So matter of fact, they said that we do not get our certificate for completing the program until after the 12 months. So, but certainly was worthwhile. It was certainly I think a good investment. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Marley, did you have?
Just as a follow-up to Mr. Campbell's presentation, I'm really pleased that you were able to find time in your very hectic schedule to attend. I'm curious, is MML going to continue to partner with the Sorelli Institute to host this comprehensive training quarterly, annually? I mean, is there an opportunity in the future for the Saline community to send somebody or enroll somebody in this advanced weekender? Or it was during the week, excuse me.
Sure, and I think the quick answer is time will tell. And then what I mean by that is, again, going back to the very first person that Mr. Sorelli helped in this capacity, and he started his work as he was working on his doctorate in Australia. The first person he helped, he said, "I'll help you if you help me," meaning that, or help him, say, meaning that if Ernesto Sorelli if they were successful in helping this person move forward, move his new business, new venture forward, that he would tell people, word of mouth, tell the newspapers, that type of thing, so it could get out there, that information could get out there, and kind of from coming, certainly going to carry a lot more weight coming from one entrepreneur to another, as opposed to from one government official to another type of thing. So, so part of that is, one, to see how it goes, and that's kind of the 12-month mentoring. And they're going to be, I can't remember how frequent, if it was monthly or quarterly, kind of type webinar type of check-ins. But anyway, and depending on how successful that is, how willing, maybe even at the state level, they are to consider something like this, to push it, to make it much larger. Because again, it is a pretty big paradigm shift from what typically what we've done in the past. And I mean, it's even, the economic gardening, the business retention, and certainly, don't get me wrong, that still is a key component, but I think this is something you add to it, because we still need to take care of our existing businesses and certainly work on attraction, but again, this helps we may have some very wonderful success stories just waiting to happen right here in our own community.
Yeah. I think it's a very valuable program, and again, I'm glad that you were able to go, and I hope that in the future there's more opportunities for this community to send people to that course. I did want to add, under other announcements and reports, that I think 2-3 weekends ago, Councilwoman Tahar and myself attended the Michigan Municipal League Advanced Weekender, their elected officials academy in Frankenmuth. I attended breakout sessions on economic development, on shared services, on regional authorities. And it's interesting, it's ironic, the discussion that Mr. Ivey and Mayor Driscoll were having. One of the theses to come out of, or the main theme to come out of my weekend course was that one of the things that is true based on the data is that quality of life issues are really the things that determine the success and the solvency of communities. And it's not just great schools, it's not just business strategies, it's not just low taxes, it's these quality of life amenities that municipalities provide, and they're being threatened, and it's actually really scary. But overall, it was a great weekend, a great couple breakout sessions. I really enjoyed it, and I think I learned quite a bit as well. In addition to that, Mayor, I don't know if you wanted to mention something about the business luncheon we had at Mangiamo's.
Are you?
It's all you.
I had other people raise their hands, so I tend to go last.
Yeah.
Anybody else have reports or announcements? Yeah, we had an economic development luncheon. Mangiamo just opened, and I think it's been very well trafficked, I guess is the right word. It seems that it's full, but we were actually fortunate enough to have a preview luncheon the Friday before it opened, so it would be a Friday 2 weeks ago. And we had over 50 attendees, and they were the larger businesses in our business park, Liebherr, Patco, Scherer Treater, some of the larger businesses. and our Economic Development Board members, and we talked about our strategies for being a successful community and how to partner successfully with the businesses. And it was very well received, and I think there was opportunities for business owners to meet each other and elected officials to meet business owners and staff. And we also had the MEDC and Ann Arbor Spark and Michigan Works representatives there to talk about their programs. And I know several people have reached out to me and said thank you, and that they'd like to actually to see it. This has been probably, I don't know, 4 years since we did one, last one, so I think we're going to try to at least do it every other year because I think it was very beneficial. And it was a good test for Montgielmo. They were excited to have the opportunity to test their wait staff out. Also, I just wanted to update, I missed the last meeting. I was in D.C. I'm a vice chair at SEMCOG, and I think, actually we're going to go back, but we went and talked, it was during, they were just talking about the continuing resolution and the budget cuts, some of the recommendations, and it was quite challenging. But at the last meeting that I was at, I mentioned the bike race, professional bike race that has been brought to our attention, and there's been some meetings with city staff, and it sounds like it's a go, and it has a great potential for bringing a new consumer base to the community. This is 600 to 1,000 professional bike racers and their cohorts with, they have 2.3 people that come with them usually, they said. So, and actually the goal ultimately would be to do an annual event in the spring here. It ties, they're doing a circuit across the country starting upstate New York in April, and then Ann Arbor Saline area in May, and then they will be in Vail in July. So it's great to be part of this circuit, and actually a race, I think I mentioned last time, was ranked the best touring race in the country last year. So the guys that are bringing this race to Saline know what they're doing, and we just have to close a few streets and throw a good party at the end of the race. And, Saline throws really good parties, so we should have no problem with that, right? Everybody's going to help out because it's very short notice. And then one other thing, on reports and announcements, I wanted to show you, the French, some of you might have seen the young gentleman that came to the council meeting about the French flags. And they invited me to their going away dinner last night, and they presented this beautiful plaque, which is symbolic. It's Corbang, I think. I don't know, it's French. So, and this is the bridge. There's a river that goes through their town, and the castle. It sounds like a beautiful place to visit. I haven't had a chance yet to Google it. But the town actually is only about 400 people, and this story, we're very excited to be able to come to Saline because they actually wanted to do an exchange, and there wasn't a community to receive them. And the school district here, since we'd done a French exchange program over the years, it was a very small group of like 8 kids, but everybody had a great time and made some new friends. So I think actually I'm going to talk to the French teacher about keeping in her classroom, because we also received avec les compliments du monsieur le maire et de son conseil municipal. I don't know, that's probably really crappy French, but
No idea what
it
that
means with the compliments of the mayor, Mr. Mayor, and the city council from the city. So it's a little plaque thing that...
Very nice.
So it was just very, for this really teeny city, I thought it was a really nice reaching out effort. And I think the schools really went above and beyond to try to make it work. So I think this should go back to the schools, personally. So you guys are okay with that? Okay, so the next item on discussion, the joint meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. Everybody has an agenda in front of them. It's this Wednesday at 8 a.m. at the Chamber offices. We were planning on sending this agenda over to them tomorrow morning, so if you see anything on the agenda that we don't have or that we should have, please let us know, and we'll add it before. We've been working on this in conjunction with the Chamber, so we'd like to have it as relevant as possible for the meeting Wednesday morning. 8 o'clock Chamber offices. The other thing, this is a preliminary draft letter, but I wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to, as I mentioned earlier, there's everything that contributes to the budget and takes away from the budget is being looked at the state level. On the docket this week at the Tax Policy Committee is tax credits, and brownfield credits are being very seriously looked at as being eliminated, which would be highly detrimental to any urban area that has any kind of one of our projects was actually a gas station that had leaky gas tanks, and So I did a little summary of the two major projects that we've had, and while I recognize that they haven't been totally completed, I think there were compromising situations, and it didn't really have anything to do with the brownfield. It had, one is further issues with the previous owner, and then the other one as, the commercial real estate market pretty much collapsed in the fall of 2008, but neither of those projects would have moved forward without the brownfield credit. So I hope that the state looks at that more seriously. I've also been talking with some people in the the Michigan Brownfield Association, and also with the league, about trying to make sure that we have some people to do testimony, but at the minimum, we can have a letter up there to make sure that they realize that to Saline, it's an important tool. And we will have other developments that come down the road in the future, and it's really difficult to develop a property if it's contaminated. It's much easier to go to a green field where then you have to build the road and the associated infrastructure to support it. And while it's cheap when it's brand new, it's like the reason urban areas are more expensive is because there's maintenance issues. So we just defer the problems. And the other thing, as I mentioned in here, it's been documented that there are more and more people that want to live in urban areas that are walkable communities downtown with a seniors, retiring seniors, and younger homeowners, or actually a lot of them are homeowners. They want not necessarily even own a home, but to be in a downtown area. So there's that housing stock really isn't that available in our community, and actually a lot of communities in Michigan. So that's something that also is a key piece of brownfield redevelopment. And then finally, to National League of Cities, Councilmember Ivy and I are going to Washington, D.C., and I'm working on a letter that I think that City Manager Campbell alluded to in the communique about the community development block grants. That is something that the federal government's talking about, or the legislators are talking about cutting. And I have not completed my letter, but I will be doing that to make sure that I did talk to, because I went with a region, the Detroit region, because the board that I'm on represents the 7-county area. So I went in to talk as a regional person, but for the city of Saline, Murphy's Crossing parking lot would not have been done, or it would have been done with great difficulty. We used $700,000, or it cost $700,000, and 2/3 of it was community development block grant money, which created 40 jobs and incented the redevelopment of the 30,000 square foot property there. Sauk Trail, we got a $1 million loan that was a part of a community development block grant, and a $400,000 grant, which created 43 jobs, or requirement was to create 43 jobs. We created 50, and actually over time it's been more than that. So, but that was the minimum requirement. The community development block grant money can be used to incent job development, and so that's when I have talked to our senators and our state representative. I've been urging them to look at the program that, if you provide programs that incent job growth and identify those programs, which we can give examples of, those are very beneficial to communities, and they're actually getting more money back from that. And that parking lot, that development, Murphy's Crossing, would not have been developed if there was not a parking lot. The city did not have the money for it, so that developer probably would have gone somewhere else. Same thing with Sauk Trail. We all know how many businesses we have in there at this point. And so, anyhow, any comments or feedback from anybody? Okay. Is there any other discussion items that anybody wants to bring up? If not, under the Open Meetings Act, students are all gone. Oh, there's 2 left. You're very good. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Is there anybody that would like to speak? If not, we'll move on to, do we have any other business to come before the City Council? Our next meeting is March 21st at 7:30 p.m. We need a motion to convene into closed session for the purpose of discussing a confidential attorney-client privilege letter. The City Council will not reconvene into a regular session at the conclusion of the closed session.
Move to convene into closed session.
Second.
Move Morrow, second Gearba. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Terhart?
Yes.
Councilmember Law?
Yes.
Councilmember Rhodes?
Yes.
Councilmember Ivy?
Yes?
Councilmember Morrow?
Yes.
Councilmember Gibai?
Yes.
Mayor Driscoll?
Yes. We convene into closed session at 9:18.